Welcome back to Recalibrate Agency. I'm your host, Danielle Photo, and today I have with us Alyson Caffrey. She is the founder of Operations Agency, and today we're going to be talking about how to be the best parentpreneur you can possibly be. Welcome, Alyson. Can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Hey Danielle, I'm super excited to be here. I feel like our longtime friendship here has just come into this like beautiful interview here. So I'm really excited to be on. So my background is in operations and systems. I started Operations Agency back in 2018, and we've been serving folks in the agency space, agencies predominantly in service-based businesses, really, figure out what their operating blueprint is. And that's something that I feel like we're amazing at doing, is making sure that the business in and of itself has a way to just really function standardized without kind of the input, right, of the founder or a lot of the handholding with the founder. And so I just really became obsessed with how, repeatable and predictable businesses can become when they start to have some of these things in place operationally. And I love working with folks on just collaborating and figuring out what's going to work best for them.
What are some of the biggest hurdles that you run across in helping owners get those operating systems functioning without them having to always input their energy and time and resources into that?
Yeah, it's an awesome question because a lot of folks, especially in the digital agency space, they have a lot of industry expertise, right? They have a lot of experience. They have a lot of really, really solid ways that they can get interesting results for clients. And that's why they start a business, right? They're like, oh, I'm not like other agencies out there. I'm doing this thing specifically different. And so transferring that knowledge to another person is usually really challenging. And so coming up with a set of core processes that help folks really take that baton and run with it is usually one of the biggest things. A lot of folks tell me that they don't have a process. They're like, oh, I don't have a process. I just jump in and I do it. And sometimes it's hard to articulate that. So often actually that is a hurdle that we meet. And we'll usually just sit down with them and say, hey, listen, walk me through this. Just dictate kind of what you're doing, what thoughts are going on in your brain. Really what we kind of say in that tagline is like, get your, business out of your brain and down onto paper. And it's been really impactful, I think, for a lot of founders. Even just like going through that process, I think helps crystallize their specific approach and thus kind of make their service offering a little bit more valuable. So it's a little bit of a double dip there where we get to, structure the things behind the scenes, but then also they can take some of these methods and some of these processes like into their sales conversations and into their front end marketing.
hmm And once it's standardized and there's other people that are able to deliver the same way that the owner was originally delivering on this unique process and system that they're marketing to clients, they can step back and focus on their personal life a little bit more too.
Mhm.
And I think right now, a lot of people have learned how to balance work life a little bit better, but now there's kind of this desire for being better parents and being better spouses. Can you share a little bit more about what generally drives some change in agencies so they can step out and be better parents, better spouses?
So this is such an interesting topic, and one, frankly, I've become decently obsessed with, right? Is like, how do we really structure things in our business and in our life so that we feel like we can show up as the best version of ourselves, right? And I think just starting with those non-negotiables is really, really important, right? What are the standard things we need to operate? And a lot of my framework that I work through is really rooted in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? I have an Operation Simplified framework, and we talk about some of those basic functions, right? So as human beings, right, we need to have sleep, we need to have water, we need to have food that nourishes us. And usually we need to like move our body in some meaningful way to feel really good, right? And so what does that look like for our business, right? What are those non-negotiables, those things you're doing all the time? But really what I call those are our standard operating procedures and our ways to plan our quarter. And really, once we start to kind of build through this process, right, of becoming self-actualized, as Maslow would put it, is we start to think through, okay, like, is my business a function of my life, or is my life a function of my business, right? Am I in service to this thing that I've created, or is this thing I've created in service to how I want to change the world and how I want to do things in my life? And so I think if we flip that script a little bit, we start to be able to carry some of the benefits of being a business owner into our personal relationships and into, being a parent. That might mean for you specifically, right? Like showing up at your kid's soccer game at 3 o'clock and like cutting out from work early and being able to schedule things into our life that actually serve us and who we want to be as human beings versus feeling really tethered to our business. A lot of times too, and just like in parenting, honestly, the lines are a little bit blurred where we can kind of let go and like cut that tether. And so having a really systematic way to assess that and be like, okay, my business is at this point right now. We've just started to kind of take on a ton of clients and my plate is looking really full. Maybe it's time right now for me to bring on an assistant, right? And so having those baby steps in place, or at least filters through which you can start to look at some of your operating procedures, I've actually found really helpful. It's the same way, right? When you start to, like, for example, we just finished potty training my son, and the lines are like a little unclear about like when we should take the diaper off of him and when we should like actually put the underwear on, and should he go overnight with no diaper or shouldn't he? And I read a book that was incredibly helpful, and they helped kind of crystallize that a little bit more. They were like, okay, here are the indicators you can look for. Then they might understand that they're ready. And then that lets you know that you're ready. And so just being able to have a process through which you can actually kind of filter some of this stuff through has helped, I think, my clients and me even personally. Like a lot of the stuff that I've created, I actually use to just help me understand like what is the next evolution of my business and how does this look and how does it allow me to show up a little bit more meaningfully as a mom and as a spouse.
And identifying maybe it's time to, and then fill in the blank. I think that's kind of a key moment, but tied in with that key moment is this concept of, well, now the next step is kind of stress testing what that scenario is going to
Yes.
play out as. Do you have any advice for stress testing your agency so that you can be a better parentpreneur?
Oh yeah, I called this the sabbatical method. It's a really, really cool way to basically just take a break from your 9 to 5. So if you find yourself project managing, if you find yourself closing all the deals or doing all the marketing or just your hand in all the things, take a paid leave of absence from your business in a specific way that basically allows you to work on your business during the time that you're working during the day versus working in your business, and removing yourself from that. I'm not saying go take, a seat on a beach anywhere, because I know that sometimes we can't even afford to take a 2-week vacation with our family. However, if we can kind of reposition the way that we actually complete our tasks inside of our agency, and really give that over to a capable team member, or start to take a look at, okay, instead of doing this task right now, maybe I could write a process for this task instead of actually doing it, or I could record my screen for this task. And really what we want to do is we want to exercise that muscle of, okay, I'm going to begin to work myself out of this, right? I'm going to make myself less dependent in this kind of ecosystem here. And so what I love to do is I love to work folks through that process and really just ask the question, like, what breaks, right? What breaks when I step away for a day? What breaks when I step away for 2 days? And start to just incrementally kind of pull that back. And it's the same thing again, like we do with our family, right? It really is. It's the same exact thing. We just give our kids a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, and they end up being their own flourishing adults. And I'm obsessed with this kind of idea that a lot of folks are like, oh, my business is my baby. My business is my baby. But like, what happens next? Like, is our business then going to be the capable adolescent? Is our business then going to be the thriving adult? And so like, where are those lines and where does our role change in that, in that kind of that progression?
It's a lot easier because human children, they do grow over time. And whether you're ready for it or not, they become preteens and then teenagers and then adults. But your business doesn't necessarily follow that same path because you actually have to guide it. You have to intentionally shape the aging of your agency per se. Why do you suppose it's hard for some agency owners and leaders to start to refine their processes and be more willing to delegate and step out of the day to day so that they can focus on their business instead of in their business? Why do you think that's so hard?
Yeah, I think it's different at different levels. Transparently, I think when we first begin to do it, we have to just like let go of our perfectionism. right? I think a lot of times when we have our hands on everything, we have a specific way that we want things done. I have a mentor that says 80% of something done by somebody else is 100% freaking awesome. And I think that that's a really interesting like quote, because I think a lot of us are hesitant to delegate because we say, oh, well, I could just do this twice as fast on my own and better than somebody else could do it. But over time, that becomes less and less true, because what you're doing is you're just costing your business more and more money, right? As your business grows and it pays you more, or it takes more in gross profit home, there's just so much there that really, folks need to work through. And so I think perfectionism is a huge one. And I also really do think that folks struggle with communication, and they struggle with like building things inside of the business that don't come natural to them. I know that a lot of folks, don't start a business so that they can create standard operating procedures, which is one of the reasons why I exist, right? I'm like, I love organizing people stuff. I mean, like, look at this behind me. Like, this is literally how I live my life. And I love it. And I think that it's really useful for a lot of folks, especially when you're inviting a team and creating a home for your business, is that honestly, someone could probably sit down in this office and work a full day here. They could know where the pens are and where the journals are and where all the things are. And they could have a functional, productive day in this office without one word from me. And I love that. I think it's accessible. And I think there's also a level of transparency and trust that exists there. And honestly, a lot of folks are scared to open the curtain. They're scared to pull it back and be like, this is my stuff. It might be a little unorganized today, but I'm getting there. And so I think there is also a level of like transparency and authenticity that folks are a little bit afraid to share.
I think you're so right on that point, especially the concept of the messy bedroom syndrome, because that's totally a thing.
Yeah.
Especially when you start, you decide, you're like, okay, I'm going to make standard operating procedures. I'm going to take my brain and put it on paper so that someone else can do it the way that I would do it, or at least to the best of their understanding and interpretation. But then their interpretation becomes different when they're looking at what they perceive to be a messy bedroom, because you haven't quite refined that standard operating procedure right, or given them the right resources to know, like, okay, why is this over here? I don't understand. So you have to
Mhm.
really go through and ensure that you have the right lens applied to the different aspects of your business too when you're making those procedures. So it's a multi-stage process as well. What's the other side of the equation where they know they want to step out of the business a little bit more, start to step back, allow for stress testing, but maybe they don't feel like any of their other team members are quite ready for them to start passing responsibilities off to?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I've found that there are a couple of things to be true about team. First is that the folks that we currently have on our team probably can do a better job than we think. We just need to be able to give them the resources. And I know that by experience working with, let's just say at this point, hundreds of agencies and running my own shop and being advisor to some other growing shops, like our team really just needs resources and clear-cut key performance indicators in order to do their job well. So what I would almost always ask, and I'm a very big proponent of like extreme ownership, and I know that all the changes come from here first and then they kind of ripple out. And so if you're sitting here listening to this, or you're thinking like, I'm not totally sure if my team can handle this, ask yourself, what resources have you provided them to do the job that you're expecting them to do? So that's number one, right? Do we have clear-cut KPIs? Do we have training? Do we have processes that they can actually access to be able to kind of move the ball forward? And so I see kind of managing team or managing operations as kind of like a Venn diagram. And really, we have people, we have process, and we have systems, right? And so the people need to be fully trained on what is our process and what system are we using to really manage that. And really, the gaps between processes and systems affect the people more than we actually know. And I think as we start to evolve as a business, and as we start to take, removing ourselves a little bit more seriously, we need to ask ourselves, like, do we have SOPs? Are those clear about what results they need to generate for us? So key performance indicators. Do we have a clear way to manage projects repeatably? And do we have systems set up to help us manage those outcomes, right? So project management tools, CRMs, like those types of things. I know so many people who are just like super excited about a shiny new piece of technology, and then they never implement it, and it seems really great on the surface, but it isn't. if you do truly go through the process and really create the SOPs and create the resources for your team, and it's just not working out, it's unfortunate, but we might just need to decide that that person either isn't in the right seat on the bus, right? They're just not in the right position in the business, or we might just need to send them off on their next opportunity. And quite frankly, we're doing them a disservice too if we keep them in our business, right? In reality, if it's really not truly a fit and they're not really excited about the solutions that we're providing for our market, then they also probably need to be moving on to the thing that is going to light them up and energize them.
Yeah. So to boil that down, really, it's looking at, are they actually set up to succeed, right? Have you given
Exactly.
them everything possible? Have you connected them to other resources in the industry vertical that you service as well? There's a lot of different ways to go about that too. Now, this is all fine and dandy when you own the business and you are in control. What about for agency leaders that don't own any part of the business itself legally, but they own a whole heck of a lot of responsibility at the agency? What advice do you have for them?
Yeah, start in your department, lead by example. I think it would be so interesting, especially when we start talking about Donald Miller wrote this interesting book called Business Made Simple a few years back, and he talks about being a value-driven professional, right? And so he talks about demonstrating outcomes that add to the bottom line as a manager and as a leader. And I think even if you don't own stake in the business and you do have a lot of responsibility and you start to lead by example and say, hey, listen, we're just going to trial this with my team. Like, do I have permission to just be able to create an internal knowledge base just specifically for systems ops? Like, that's it. And so just lead by example and show them like, hey, look, we set out in the department to do X, Y, or Z. We implemented these really cool systems, or we centralized a way in which we, create projects, manage projects, and close out projects. And it helped us get things done this much faster. And it helped us add this much to our bottom line, or whatever. You just need to demonstrate those outcomes. So I think even just performing a case study and leading by example in your department could really help you ascend to that leader level that could even be leading projects of growth in other areas of the organization too.
hmm What I'm hearing a lot as a possible objection for a listener right now is, okay, that's all fine and dandy. Like, I need to do more, more, more. That's my problem, though, is I already feel like I'm doing too much and I'm trying to step back.
Mhm.
Or maybe it's even a worse situation. I'm already burned out. I need to step back, but
Mhm.
nothing is in place for me to be able to step back. In a crisis mode like that, what is the first step that people should take?
Yeah, it's a wonderful question. So I firmly disagree that more is more. It's not. I think less is absolutely more. I think there's one practical thing I'll give, and then I'll kind of zoom out at 30,000 feet. So the practical thing is that even if you're inputting and working in the business right now, get Loom on your Chrome extension and just start recording your screen. I think that is probably one of the biggest unlocks for me as a professional, and something I teach to all of my clients is that we live in a digital age. It's most likely that most of our clients, most of our team are going to be remote in some capacity, and compiling a digital space of videos where you're walking through some of the most critical steps in your business is absolutely paramount to success from any perspective, right? From any function in the business. So that's the first and foremost thing. It's very tactical. You can start doing that. And it's what I like to call folding time. So you don't need to add any new time to your calendar. You just record those things, make sure all of your calls with clients are recorded so that you can snip that beginning piece and say, here's how I deliver client work. Here's how I solicit feedback, et cetera, et cetera. And then folks can create processes out of that. So that's number one. The second thing at 30,000 feet, if you find yourself just really unable to access time away or time off from your business, I think that what we need to start to think about is some of those essentials that I talked about. So it's the same thing that someone perhaps is going through when they maybe have neglected their physical health a little bit, right? We have so much to do. We have so much going on that we can't physically think about eating healthy because we just need the quickest solution, or we can't find time to work out because we have so much on our plate and we feel like we can't just snag that 20 minutes. My opinion is to start as small as humanly possible. I had a coach one time tell me that if I couldn't find time to go to the gym, just drive there and sit in the parking lot and let that be a win for the day, and then go home. And then the next day, maybe we just go inside. and then we come back out. Now, that might sound a little crazy for you in practice, because in my opinion, when he told me that, I was like, wow, what a gigantic time waster. I'm telling you, I don't have enough time, and you're telling me to drive to the gym and just sit in the parking lot. But what I did then was I said, okay, if I don't have time to drive to the gym and sit in the parking lot, what I need to do is I need to create a space that I can access very quickly to be able to move my body and be able to get more energy in my life. So we created a home gym a few years ago, like just before COVID. Honestly, I was very, very grateful to that when everything shut down and we didn't have anywhere to go. We had just built our home gym, and I was like, this is such a game changer for us, because I always felt like I didn't have enough time. I need a workout to sustain my energy throughout the day. And I can just go and do it ad hoc before I jump into work in the morning or while I'm at lunch or whatever else. And so what might be that one easy implementable thing for you, right? Is it Loom? Is it just simply getting that and compiling the database? Is it hiring a VA to be able to like help you with some of those one-off tasks where you're not actually answering your emails or scheduling your phone calls or doing some of those types of things? So I question, like, what is like the lowest barrier to entry, right? We don't start a marathon by running the marathon, right? Like, we train for the marathon first, and that very first run might look a little funky, and we might run it kind of slow, and it might only be a mile, and that is still progress.
hmm I want to dig into one of the points you made about Loom videos. I love Loom and I love Asana. Well, Asana and Loom are like my two things. And so when I hired a VA, I actually spent, it probably only took me 4 hours total to get a like 5-page documentation done with some Asana task templates and some Loom videos for the primary tasks that she was going to be doing on a regular basis. And I just sat down and I did it. I blocked out time on my calendar to do that. Now, say your situation's a little bit different. Maybe you are leading a team that is bigger and you don't have standard operating procedures or trainings, but you know that you need to, but you're not entirely sure what exactly they need to cover because everything is so fluid, maybe at your agency. Another idea would be have your employees, team members, write the SOPs. So maybe you do a weekly session and everyone comes together and you assign out different items and then everyone just sits down and does it. You can be on a Zoom call and just all do it focus time together so that it gets done. But that's another way that you might consider going about it. If you personally cannot do all of it, but you still need those in place, would you add to that list in any way, Alyson?
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful idea. And frankly, we love to put the baton in team members' hands, especially as they start to get more and more and more skilled in their specific disciplines. They may actually, you might find as an agency owner that people at your agency do things better than you could do them when you first founded, right? And so I totally agree that spreading out the work is incredibly impactful, A, for getting things done really quickly, but also B, because you're starting to build that process culture in your team. And it's really impactful to have a process culture in your team. And I always talk about this, is that everybody has a job description, right? And even if they're not part of the systems or ops team or the administrative team, everybody has like 3% of their job description includes SOPs, right? It includes making repeatable documentation out of the things that they do. And I think it seems so foreign to some because a lot of us start our businesses because we're so anti-corporate and it feels very corporate. It feels very red tape. But there are really easily accessible ways to be able to get the benefits of some of this corporate structure without all of the red tape and all of the approvals.
Well, and some of that is becoming even more necessary because you don't have osmosis learning happening just by nature of being in an office
Yes.
space together. You don't have that anymore if you're a fully
Mhm.
remote agency. You have to find ways to bring that knowledge in to new team members, to team members that you're trying to grow into different roles in different ways than just having them absorb conversations on the fly in an office space, unless you go back to being in an office, which I think is going to come sooner than later too. But in the meantime, you still have to document it somewhere.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, I think that's profound for sure.
what has made you um, what has made you really change your mindset about being a parentpreneur? Like, what was the triggering moment in your life?
That's a good question. Triggering moment, I mean, probably was my very first maternity leave. I searched a lot for resources online for entrepreneurs and mat leave and how that goes. And there really isn't a lot of support actually for entrepreneurs around maternity leave. And I was really thankful for my ops acumen at the time, to really make sure that my business was shored up and everybody had what they needed to kind of just go off without a hitch. And it's really unfortunate that some folks may be in a position where they need to leave their business for whatever amount of time, either for a maternity leave or for a full on sabbatical or for medical leave or for family leave or any of those things, and they just don't have access to some of those things. And so I was thinking, like, what might it be like for somebody in my position who didn't have access to some of these systems, and they would probably feel like they were being ripped away from like some of these really impactful times with their kid, right? Like these like beautiful beginning times. And like, don't get me wrong, they're also really challenging, but like feeling also pulled in another direction, it's just hard. And so I remember taking the first leave and I was like, man, this is hard and there needs to probably be some more resources here. And I had a lot of things that I did that were, literally cut from our own cloth that we were helping clients with, with agency owners and things. And I was like, well, why don't I just make this a little bit more crystallized? And we can kind of serve folks in this way as well. And so that was kind of how being a parentpreneur really, it just solidified for me, because I know that also the kind of post-birth part is just the beginning. Like, kids get sick and they have games and they need a lot of attention and a lot of care and a lot of your time and a lot of your mental bandwidth. And so I didn't want my kids to feel like, or me to look back on these years feeling like I was just vacant. I was just really in service of growing my business, because that is true. Like, my business is in a huge growth year this year and last year, and really honestly, like, needs a lot of my time still. I'm working through my team. I have a team of 14. And it's still a lot to handle at times. And as much as we can just be refining this process and taking the right steps when we can, just like being a parent, there's no such thing as perfection. And I think it's the same as being a business owner. Like, we really can just do today's best work. And I think balancing that and being a parent has actually helped me be a better business owner. And I also think being a business owner has helped me be a better parent. I'm a little bit more intentional about conversations and like my experience managing team members and my experience like communicating key outcomes and things, right, has, like, I think made me a better parent. And I mean, my kids are still pretty little, but I think it's a good balance there of leadership on both sides.
It sure sounds like it. So what's something that you and your team have recently launched or accomplished that you're really proud of?
Yeah, so we have a brand new like company management board, which I'm really excited about. So we use Airtable internally for like all of our project management and things. And it's kind of like the water cooler, which I felt like we haven't really needed until now. Like, now with a 14-person team, I'm like, okay, we need to know what's going on with everybody, like at a personal level, and like so that we can cheer each other on and just be friends and all the things. And so we actually launched our company management board, and we have kind of like the water cooler section that we're rolling out for this quarter, which this is the first week of the quarter, which I'm excited. I literally rolled it out to my full team this morning. And I just love it. I'm really happy about just like the unity that it's going to bring to our team. We've also done a company book club in the past, and we've decided to relaunch that for Q2, which I'm really excited about too. So everybody can either read the company book that we're reading together, or they can just tell us on their company profile on our management board what book they are reading or what like series they're consuming, so that we kind of have a common thread to just like chat through, because my team's entirely virtual. So that's a really exciting thing actually that we just launched that I'm super proud of.
That is super exciting. And I think that harnessing the human element of teams is really, really important. Going to a mindset of actually recognizing people are human beings, not just human doings.
Mhm.
and fostering that in a digital work environment, I think is really important too. And so you're doing book clubs. It sounds like you also have a book coming out too. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure do. Early summer. It's called the sabbatical method. And really, it is a step-by-step framework for anyone who feels really tethered to their business to kind of systematically move themselves out. Like I said before, it doesn't look like going and chilling on a beach on your first run, but what it does look like is really taking a paid leave from your regular 9 to 5. If your hair is on fire and all of the things, and you're just like, how on earth am I going to access a really implementable way to get myself out of this stuff? Go pick it up. I hope that it'll be really impactful for those reading. And honestly, our Operation Simplified framework is really rooted inside of the book, which I'm really excited to kind of take a little bit more public, I guess, because we've been using it behind the scenes with our private clients, and it's been working so well. So I think like having that way to kind of crystallize the process and get it out to more people, I'm just really excited about it. So yeah, early June the book comes out, and yeah.
Perfect. I'll definitely be keeping my eye out for that and read through that too. I'll put a link in the show notes as well once that's live. Um,
Thanks.
Allison, thank you so much for coming on, for sharing your experiences and some really practical tips. I really appreciate you coming on today. And to summarize a couple of the key takeaways, it really is starting with identifying what you can find replacements for. So, replacements in your daily to do list, replacements for your roles and responsibilities, so that then you can become the best parentpreneur possible and start stepping away from your business. Even if your business is your baby, it needs to grow up too. And so defining those key milestones of your business, of your agency, and identifying what structure needs to be in place at each of these points, and then creating a roadmap of what SOPs, what policies and procedures need to be in place, who should be responsible for what kind of communication needs to happen to keep specific people informed versus actually who's doing the work. That needs to be in place too, and leverage the tools that you have that are digital while you're in digital environments. If you wind up going back into the office and having some of those in-person synchronous communication and osmosisable conversations, that's great. But for now, you really do need to put your brain on paper so that your team can access the process that you use and the steps that you use, and create that repeatable system so that you can step back and work on the business. And if you're feeling burnt out, you can still do this without adding anything to your schedule. Find ways to continue doing your tasks and record videos, and then delegate out to your team to finish writing out the SOPs, or hire a VA that can do it, or maybe a writer on Upwork that can just go through that video and write out an SOP. Find solutions so that you don't have to do everything either, and you can focus on getting out of your business a little bit more. That's all for today on Recalibrate Agency. I'm your host, Danielle Photo. Cheers until next time.